What would happen if one day humans could truly unlock 100% of their brain capacity? You know, even the genius Einstein only used about 13%. The movie Lucy takes this crazy idea to the absolute extreme, transforming Scarlett Johansson into a superhuman capable of manipulating time and controlling matter. But don't think this is just a simple thrill ride. Beneath it all, the film hides a final answer about how humanity evolves. Moreover, director Luc Besson has buried dozens of details and Easter eggs throughout the movie. So in today's video, I will take you through the timeline to completely deconstruct the film, guaranteeing you will see a totally different Lucy. Also at the end, we will discuss how science actually evaluates this claim that humans only use 10% of their brains. Everything starts with Lucy's boyfriend, Richard. Richard appears all smiles on the surface, but he turns around and tricks Lucy into making a delivery, even handcuffing her to a briefcase and forcing her to hand it over to the mob boss, Mr. Jang. However, the case isn't filled with money, but a mysterious blue substance. According to the movie's lore, this substance is actually naturally secreted by pregnant women during the 6th week of gestation. In other words, it is originally the key factor in nurturing life. The director uses this setting to hardcore link evolution with superpowers. And the password to the case hides a secret: 140 on one side, 140 on the other, adding up to exactly 280. The average human pregnancy cycle also happens to be exactly 280 days. This means that this opening scene alone already hints at the connection between the substance and the origin of life. Subsequently, they test the substance on a man. Notice the corpse's posture. It's as stiff as a wooden stick, obviously a mannequin prop. Immediately after, Mr. Jang offers Lucy a job, but she refuses without a second thought.
I don't want a job.
The scene shifts, and the film cuts to a university lecture about humans only using 10% of their brains. This edit is incredibly clever. Lucy has just made a brainless decision, saying no to a ruthless mob boss to his face, and the camera cuts directly to the 10% brain usage theory, maxing out the irony. However, the real detail isn't this, but rather the projection behind Professor Norman. That large image is actually a complete microcosm of the universe, extending from the Big Bang all the way to modern humanity. In other words, the director buries a foreshadowing right from the start. When Lucy completely unlocks 100% of her brain, she will witness this entire process with her own eyes. Time, matter, and the origin of the universe will all replay before her. When Lucy wakes up in a bed, she discovers an incision has been made in her abdomen. Upon asking, she learns that a bag of contraband has been sewn directly into her abdomen. However, during her captivity, a gangster thug targets Lucy because of her good looks.
I'm not in the mood.
After being rejected, he licks his fingers with a menacing look, knocks the defenseless Lucy down with a punch, and then, still not satisfied, frantically kicks her in the stomach. Although the angry thug is dragged away by his associates in time, severe pain radiates from Lucy's abdomen. The packaging of the contraband has ruptured, and countless blue granules explode and skip like lightning within her body, merging into her blood vessels and flowing rapidly to her limbs. Lucy can feel endless energy rampaging through her body. Simultaneously, she completely loses control over her physical form, as if no longer bound by gravity, bouncing and clinging to the walls with the surge of energy. As the leaked substance is fully absorbed, Lucy's body and consciousness begin to evolve wildly toward a superhuman state. Not only is her physical fatigue swept away, but even her emotions become abnormally calm. Hearing footsteps approaching down the hallway, Lucy quietly straightens her chair and returns to her original position. When the guard enters to check, she actively flashes a seductive smile and extends an invitation. The guard immediately gets the hint. He sets his weapon aside, unbuckles his belt, and then walks over, completely unaware that Lucy's expression has already turned ice cold. After unlocking the chains and subduing the guard, Lucy rushes down the corridor, heading straight for the main hall. Outside, a few thugs, still unaware that death is closing in, are taken out by lightning-fast gunfire the moment they respond to Lucy's call. But did you notice? Her first reaction after taking these lives isn't fear or fleeing, but frantic eating. She devours enough food for several men, acting as if she hasn't eaten for days. But this isn't simple hunger. The director hides a scientific detail here. Although our brain only accounts for 2% of our body weight, it consumes a full 20% of our energy. In other words, Lucy's brain is now overclocking, so she requires energy replenishment far beyond that of a normal person to maintain this state. Sated, Lucy arrives at a hospital and barges into an operating room with a gun. She ignores the patient currently being resuscitated, merely glances at the brain's CT on the wall, and upon determining the patient is beyond saving, raises her hand and sends him to the afterlife with a single shot, ending his suffering early. Before everyone can recover from the shock, Lucy is already lying on the operating table, threatening the doctor to remove the remaining contraband from her body. She can clearly perceive that she must find the remaining 3 bags of the substance to sustain her brain. Otherwise, she will die within 24 hours. Subsequently, wielding dual pistols, Lucy arrives at the hotel where she originally dealt with Mr. Jang. Relying on vision that can penetrate matter, she fires several shots through the door, precisely hitting the henchman behind it. The oblivious Mr. Jang is still leisurely enjoying a spa treatment in the room.
Learning's always a painful process. Where are the others? The others carrying the drugs. I need the rest of it. For medicinal purposes.
It must be said, Mr. Jang is a hardened criminal who lives on the edge. Even when his hands are impaled, he doesn't make a sound. Not only does he refuse to reveal the whereabouts of the other 3 bags of contraband, he even glares fiercely at Lucy, clearly ready to fight to the bitter end. Seeing this, Lucy wastes no more words. She presses her fingers to Mr. Jang's temple and forcefully invades his mind, accessing the neurons that store memory, and successfully sees the whereabouts of the other 3. Having obtained what she came for, she turns and leaves, leaving Mr. Jang behind, seething with suppressed rage. To understand the evolution of her own brain more deeply, Lucy returns home and reads Professor Norman's research report online, then instantly hacks into the TV in the professor's home to have a real-time face-to-face conversation with him. Facing the bewildered professor, Lucy bluntly states that because she absorbed an excessive amount of the synthetic substance, her brain cells are reproducing at an astonishing rate of millions per second. Now, she can not only control her own metabolism at will, but even control the most basic magnetic and electric waves. Witnessing this, Norman can't help but marvel. However, Lucy herself feels no joy because, as her thinking transcends into a completely different realm, she can clearly sense that her humanity is gradually vanishing. Moreover, she has at most 24 hours to live. By then, everything will be an illusion, unable to generate any meaning. Lucy hopes the professor can point her in the right direction. She doesn't know what to do next. After listening to Lucy's story, Norman ponders, suppressing his internal shock, and offers the only answer he can think of.
So if you're asking me what to do with all this knowledge you're accumulating, I say, pass it on. Just like any simple cell going through time.
This suddenly enlightens Lucy. Since knowledge is eternal, she decides that in the final moments of her life, she will unreservedly share the infinite knowledge she possesses with humanity. Ending the call, Lucy understands that the priority is to find the other 3 bags of the substance as soon as possible to sustain her brain's evolution, ensuring she survives long enough to find the professor and complete the transfer of knowledge. On her way to the airport, she calls the French police to inform them of the flight details of the other 3.
Listen up, Piero Del Rio. Get off your desk, sit in your chair, pick up the red pen to the left of you, and take down everything I say. There are no cameras. Hurry up. I have no time to waste.
Then she hacks into the police computers, transmitting all information about the 3, including their appearances, to Detective Del Rio. Receiving the intel, the French police quickly move to arrest the 3 just as they enter the country, successfully taking them away before Mr. Jang's henchmen can collect the goods. By this time, Lucy has already boarded a plane. However, during the flight, the movie presents an incredibly clever visual metaphor. When her brain capacity reaches 40%, she can type on one laptop while operating another computer simultaneously. This scene actually mirrors the earlier university classroom sequence. Back then, it was a group of students each using a computer. But now, a single Lucy can perform the work of several people simultaneously. The director uses this detail to tell us that Lucy's evolution has given her capabilities equivalent to multiple humans stacked together. But power isn't free. Lucy's body begins to show signs of disintegration, her fingertips turning into countless particles dancing in the air. She rushes to the restroom. A male flight attendant tries to follow to check on her, but is waved away and knocked back before he can get close. Lucy understands this is exactly the consequence of reaching 40%. Every inch of flesh and every cell in her body has evolved self-awareness, instinctively seeking independence from the host. The urgent task is to give the cells enough energy to keep them, otherwise her entire being will turn into nothingness and completely dissipate. So she immediately pulls out the remaining contraband from her bag and begins to consume it frantically, regardless of the consequences. The symptoms alleviate somewhat, but it still cannot completely stop the dissipation. She leans helplessly against the wall, watching countless cells scrambling to detach from her flesh. Not long after, Lucy wakes up to find she has been taken to a hospital by the crew. Clearly, that bag of substance finally worked, not only soothing the restless cells, but also boosting her brain evolution to 50%. When she changes clothes and walks out of the ward, she is blocked by Del Rio, who had received the news. Lucy can't be bothered to deal with him. With a mere thought, bullets fall out of his magazine. She then walks up to Del Rio and states her purpose directly: to retrieve the 3 bags of the substance. From here on, the plot enters its climax. Lucy gains another godlike ability. She can see colorful threads in the air with her naked eye. These are visualized electromagnetic waves. As if sensing a dangerous signal, she reaches out and manipulates the threads. She quickly locks onto a specific communication stream from the thousands of lines, learning that Mr. Jang is already one step ahead. He has rushed to a hospital over 10 kilometers away, preparing to snatch those 3 bags of contraband. To get ahead of them, Lucy ignores Del Rio's objections, moves him to the passenger seat with a thought, takes the driver's seat herself, floors the gas, and races toward the hospital. This car chase sequence is arguably one of the most high-octane scenes in the film. Lucy drives wildly against traffic, throwing the entire city into chaos instantly. Amidst the chaos, the director secretly slips in a small Easter egg. A newspaper ad flashing by in the shot is actually a promotion for another movie, Pacific Rim. However, even though Lucy pushes her speed to the limit with her god-tier driving skills, the gang breaks into the hospital first and takes down several officers. By the time Lucy arrives, the lead henchman has already secured the 3 packages of contraband and is preparing to head back and report. But he is a step too late and is intercepted by Lucy. At this point, Lucy's brain evolution has reached a staggering 60%. The superpowers she can use are becoming increasingly formidable. She casually creates an air barrier, stopping the men with ease. Then, with a single thought, she sucks all their weapons to the ceiling. At this moment, the laws of physics become tangible tools in her eyes. Facing this overwhelming power, Del Rio instantly doubts himself, feeling completely useless. But Lucy insists he comes along, not because she needs protection, but because she needs an anchor to remind her that she is still human. And it's precisely because of this that Scarlett Johansson's performance here feels especially layered. You can clearly see that as her intelligence skyrockets, her emotions are fading. Her eyes grow colder, her movements more mechanical. She is transforming from a human into a logic machine. Next, the plot moves to the university research lab. Lucy finds Professor Norman, intending to share everything she knows with them. Just then, Mr. Jang arrives at the school with his men. Although the police have stationed security personnel around the school, facing the disparity in numbers, they simply can't hold out for long. Seeing this, Lucy injects all the remaining substance into her body on the spot, allowing her body to enter a 100% state completely. When her brain evolution breaks through to 70%, her mortal flesh begins to change. Countless black, tumor-like substances extend from her body, attaching to and devouring all matter in the room to provide enough energy for her brain's frantic evolution. As all matter in the room is consumed, Lucy's brain successfully evolves to a higher dimension. The surrounding environment vanishes instantly, and everyone is pulled into a pure white space by her thought. At this moment, using herself as the core, Lucy creates an organic supercomputer. This living computer can traverse space and time to store information. Meanwhile, the gunfight between the police and the gang outside reaches a fever pitch. Once Lucy fully enters the 100% brain state following a blast from a rocket launcher, her consciousness begins to break through the limits of time and space, shuttling through the river of time to witness the evolution of Earth and the universe. In a scene in New York, a poster flashes on a background wall, which is actually a promotion for another Luc Besson film, The Family. And at this moment, the movie offers an interesting visual metaphor. During the earlier battle, the statue of Robert de Sorbonne, founder of the Sorbonne University, was destroyed, symbolizing that the old system of human knowledge is being superseded by the new. The shot deliberately places Lucy standing in the statue's original position as if she has become the new embodiment of knowledge. Ultimately, Lucy's time travel brings her back to the origin of humanity, where she comes face to face with the first ancient hominid on Earth. Interestingly, the first female hominid fossil discovered by humans was named Lucy. At this moment, the movie recreates the classic scene from Michelangelo's The Creation of Adam. Two fingers slowly touch. This is also a homage to 2001, A Space Odyssey. In that film, a primate touches a black monolith to kickstart human evolution. Here, the ancestor Lucy touches the modern Lucy, completing the relay of life. This touch of creation symbolizes that a new chapter of human evolution opens from this moment. But just as the brain's evolution is about to reach the critical final step, Mr. Jang breaks through Del Rio's defense and kills his way in. However, at the very moment he fires, Lucy finally ascends. Witnessing Lucy vanish into thin air right before his eyes, Mr. Jang is bewildered, but also thoroughly enraged. He furiously raises his gun to go on a killing spree, but before he can pull the trigger, he is taken out by several bullets from Del Rio, who arrives just in time. The crisis is resolved. In the end, Lucy condenses all her knowledge and leaves behind a USB drive. This tiny storage device acts as the spark of human civilization, handed over to Professor Norman. The movie uses this to answer the philosophical proposition raised earlier. And this USB drive is deliberately made in similar proportions to the monolith in 2001. It shimmers with starlight, looking like a miniature universe. This echoes Professor Norman's earlier line.
100 billion neurons per human, of which only 15% are activated. There are more connections in the human body than there are stars in the galaxy.
Before completely dissipating, Lucy sends a short message to Del Rio. I am everywhere. She is no longer human, but an omnipresent existence, a form approaching that of a deity. Finally, let's separate fiction from real science. At the beginning, Professor Norman claims in his lecture that humans only use 10% of their brains. This is actually complete pseudoscience. It originated from psychologist William James, who proposed that humans only utilize a small part of their potential, but he never said 10%. Later, media arbitrarily added a number, hyping it up into the rumor of the century. In fact, we do use 100% of our brains, just not all at once. Just like watching this video right now, you use your visual cortex to see, your auditory cortex to hear, and your frontal lobe to understand. If you really lit up the whole brain at once, it would basically be equivalent to a brain short circuit. You wouldn't survive it. There is another obvious scientific error in the movie. It says dolphins possess echolocation because they use 20% of their brains. In fact, this has nothing to do with brain usage rates. Echolocation is a special sensory system gradually formed by dolphins during long-term evolution, not because they used more of their brains. What's more interesting is that humans can also learn similar skills later in life. Some blind people use tongue clicks and reflected echoes to perceive their environment. Research has found that in such cases, their brain's visual cortex can actually reorganize to start processing sound information. This is our real superpower, neuroplasticity. So-called neuroplasticity is the brain's ability to constantly reorganize, build new connections, and learn new skills throughout a lifetime. It doesn't require any fictional substance or percentage myth, yet it is even more magical than the contraband in the movie. So that line in the movie, "The meaning of life is to pass on what you have learned," is actually reminding us that true human evolution never relies on fictional drugs, but on constant learning, sharing, and inheritance. And Lucy's story is like a visualized fable. When humans dare to break through limits and pass on knowledge, we ourselves are infinite.